Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's WIOA Wednesday webinar, although it is technically on a Friday. It's part of the same series. I will be your moderator and technical support. My name is Antonio Gomez. I work for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support based out of Illinois State University. If you need anything, please let me know in the chat or put it in the Q&A. We're happy to help you out that way. Please hold all questions until the Q&A portion of this webinar or post questions in the chat. Questions can get a little lost in the chat though, so if you put them in the Q&A, that's a little bit of an easier way for us to track them down. But I will be on here making sure that we get all the questions, and I will help whenever we get to those portions. This webinar also will be offering closed captioning for accessibility, so feel free to turn that on. We will also be recording this webinar, and a recording and all materials will be available within 2 business days on the Illinois Workforce Academy, and I will put a link to the Illinois Workforce Academy in the chat shortly. Before we get started, I'm going to get us going with a couple of polls here. So if you could take a couple of seconds for us, this helps us with our data tracking. All right, we've got 2 polls. The first one is which partner do you represent? And the second one is where is your local area? We'll give a couple of seconds as responses roll in. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share results. Looks as though we've got quite a few Title I folks, a good number of Title II, a few Title III, and other WIOA partners and stakeholders. Welcome. We're very happy to have you. And this is about the most even distribution of Chicago, North Central, Southern, and statewide that I've seen. I guess statewide is less than the others, but very even distribution. So thank you so much for being here. This helps us for data tracking. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Drew Thomason to get us kicked off.
Great. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for all the support that you provide for this. It's very helpful and very appreciated. Thank you all for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Drew Thomason. I work for KEB out of Springfield. We help facilitate statewide activities for the WIOA workforce system here in Illinois. As part of that, we help facilitate the team that develops the state plan as well as the modification. So I'm here today on behalf of that group. I want to start by giving a quick overview of our time together today. First, we're going to do a level set about what the WIOA or WIOA state plan is. We'll discuss how the current state plan was developed. We'll talk about what the modification of the state plan is and what that looks like. We'll go over the economic and workforce analysis that was done as part of this modification. I'm talking about how that has changed since 2024. We'll talk about the emerging themes that we're looking at incorporating into the state, the modification of the state plan. And then we'll talk about the timeline for the public comment period. Before we move to that timeline, though, we will pause and open the floor for any questions that you have about anything that you hear today or any other questions about the modification of the state plan. So first, let's get an overview of what is the WIOA state plan. The state plan provides a vision for the governor that is of an integration of workforce, education, and economic development policies and programs for the state. So it is that vision guiding our workforce system. The state plan also serves as a federal compliance document, and it is required under the law, and we must submit that to the United States Departments of Labor and Education. Let's talk about how the current state plan was developed. Our plan was developed through extensive stakeholder feedback, as well as extensive analysis and data crunching for the stakeholder feedback. In May of 2023, there was a state plan visioning retreat that was hosted by Governor Pritzker to kick off the planning effort. It included representatives from the core and required partners under WIOA, other stakeholders, as well as members of the Illinois Workforce and Innovation Board. Using that retreat and the initial vision described in that retreat, the work group began to put together the plan. The work group made sure that the state board, as well as other stakeholders, were updated throughout that process. We also hosted a robust stakeholder engagement plan that included 13 in-person listening sessions in each of the 10 economic development regions throughout the state, and that included 3 in Cook County. We also hosted 3 online listening sessions. What we heard from those listening sessions helped refine the draft of that 2024 state plan. Based on what we heard during those listening sessions, the direction from the governor's office, as well as from the state board and other stakeholders, the plan was developed. It was posted for public comment, and those public comments were incorporated into the final version of the state plan that was submitted to the Department of Labor and Department of Education in March of 2024. The plan was approved to go into effect July 1 of 2024. So that's how we developed the 2024 state plan. Let's talk a little bit about what a state plan modification is. So first of all, what is the state plan modification not? It is not a full rewrite of the plan. Instead, it is intended to be an update to the plan in a way that ensures that the plan reflects the current realities of the economy, the labor market, the workforce, any emerging priorities that we see as a state, and any major changes that happen to the workforce system since the development of that original plan. So again, this is not a full rewrite of that 2024 plan, but really a midstream course correction to ensure that that plan stays relevant. Real quick, before I go on to this, I also want to say that the modification, just like the state plan, is a federal compliance piece that is required under the WIOA statute. Next, I want to talk about the economic and workforce analysis that was done as part of the development of this draft modification. Bring in some highlights around maybe some of the challenges we're seeing, as well as some of the opportunities that can be found within those challenges. So let's start with a broad overview of our current landscape. The state has largely regained the jobs that were lost during the pandemic. We see that many industries, most industries, are operating at either at pre-pandemic levels or very close to those pre-pandemic levels. But that recovery over the past several years has revealed several challenges that aren't going to just resolve themselves because we do see that the economy is stabilizing. Some of those challenges could include that we know that some employers are still struggling to find workers with the right skill sets and credentials, even though those job openings might exist. We have seen slower employment growth than expected, despite continued demand. And there are some ongoing gaps in workforce participation that continue even though we are 6 years past the pandemic. So I talked about some of those challenges becoming clear. What are those? So again, we see a challenge of skills and credential mismatches. We see that employers are reporting open positions, but when they interview candidates, many of them don't meet the credential or skill requirements. And that's especially true for technical jobs as well as middle skill jobs. And middle skill jobs are those that need more than a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year bachelor's degree. Again, we've seen slower job growth. So even though employment has recovered, hiring hasn't really accelerated in the way that you would typically see after a recession. Again, we also continue to see some uneven participation in the workforce. Some groups just continue to remain disconnected, even though we do see jobs available. And then lastly, job change can outpace training. Technology, especially, and some operational changes are really reshaping roles faster than some of the training pathways can respond. And this kind of builds on that. Jobs are being redesigned. You can't look at anything about jobs or the labor market or the economy without hearing talk about AI. We know that that is reshaping the job landscape. But automation and AI aren't necessarily eliminating jobs or most jobs, but they are changing them. So, routine tasks are increasingly becoming automated. Employers really expect workers to have digital skills, some advanced problem-solving abilities, and be adaptable to an ever-changing landscape. And we know that workers without access to reskilling opportunities to meet the needs of employers do face a greater risk of displacement. As I mentioned earlier, that participation gap in the workforce, in the labor market, does persist. Some populations continue to experience higher unemployment, low labor force participation, and we do know that some of that is due to some common barriers. That includes childcare, transportation, disability access, maybe credential recognition. And we know that these barriers, as well as these participation gaps, can limit the talent supply for employers. But as I said, the upside is that these challenges are well defined. Employers are clear about the skills that they need. Short-term credentials and work-based learning are really effective responses to that strong demand for that middle skill talent. And we know that Illinois already has tools in place that are currently responding to this and can continue to respond to this into the future. So again, I want to go over some of these opportunities. So where are we seeing strong demand? We're seeing strong demand in healthcare and human services, transportation and logistics, construction and skilled trades, and education and support services. These sectors continue to generate large number of job openings. And we know that many of the roles within these sectors are stable roles. They create clear pathways for advancement for employees, and they generally offer a family sustaining wages. We know that the demand in these sectors and areas usually also creates that long-term opportunity for employees instead of short-term spikes. So again, I know I keep coming back to this, but the strongest demand is for those middle skill jobs. Again, those jobs that require more than a high school degree, but not a 4-year bachelor's degree. To get skilled for these jobs, it often requires less time and costs less than a 4-year degree. Our workforce programs are really well positioned to expand access to this training and these career pathways. And it creates opportunity for maybe a faster entry into the labor market. And again, creates that upward mobility for those employees or job seekers. Again, we talked about technology, and while it is kind of raising that skill floor for employees, we know that that's not necessarily eliminating opportunity for them. Workers who gain that digital skills, those technical skills, can often move into higher value roles. And reskilling supports both job retention and career progression. And again, we really feel that the workforce systems are positioned to help workers adapt to the changing landscape instead of fall behind. So we talked about participation gap. We know that many individuals who maybe aren't participating want to participate. Maybe they face some of those barriers that I mentioned earlier. We know that helping support with childcare, transportation, credential recognition really supports both the job seeker as well as provides additional talent for employers. That expanded participation supports everyone. And as I've said several times, and as we've documented in both the 2024 state plan, and maybe I'll talk about this a little bit later with the re-emphasis in our draft modification, we really think Illinois has effective tools to address these challenges and take advantage of these opportunities. You think about apprenticeships or pre-apprenticeships, on-the-job training, short-term training, education opportunities, all that are aligned with employer needs. We talk about sector partnerships, and we know that those help ensure that training stays relevant. And we have continued to work towards integrated service delivery to reduce barriers to accessing services, to accessing employment opportunities, and to improve outcomes. So every challenge that we've identified really has that corresponding opportunity. Skills gaps, targeted training, job change, the reskilling pathways, participation gaps, expanded access to supportive services. The key is really aligning these systems to be able to respond quickly and with intention and deliberately to the needs of both job seekers and employees, as well as employers. So that's kind of the bigger picture of what we saw when we've revisited the current landscape of the labor market, the economy, and the workforce system in Illinois. Now I want to talk about some specific items that we're exploring as part of this modification. So generally, we think that these emerging themes can really fall under two broad categories. The first one is acknowledgement and addressing new federal or policy developments. And the second one is planning and coordination efforts around service delivery and supporting employers and employees, as well as job seekers. So first, I want to talk through 3 items that we are explicitly exploring as part of the modification that are responding to new federal or policy developments. So first, draft language in the plan, in the modification of the plan, acknowledges the recent change in SNAP work requirements. I'm sure many of you are aware, but if you're not, under the One Big Beautiful Bill, many, if not most, SNAP recipients will now have to meet work requirements in order to receive those benefits. We know that there's the need of the workforce system to be aware of this and responsive where possible. This activity, as described in the draft modification, is explicitly framed as planning and coordination with appropriate agencies. Again, the intent is to ensure that there is an awareness of this need, an alignment to support those that are facing this, and continuing to work together to support those individuals. Workforce Pell is another emerging opportunity. Again, if you're unaware, Workforce Pell is a new Pell program that supports shorter term training than traditional Pell. We really feel that this is an opportunity maybe for some braided funding and customer-centered service delivery, but not necessarily a required funding or service shift under WIOA. So the draft language within this modification really focuses on exploring and advancing strategies that support those Workforce Pell recipients. And again, there's an emphasis on coordination with the partners, education and training partners, where those recipients would be receiving that training, and how can the WIOA programs support that as well. Then there's also a revision to the original DEIA, diversity, equity, and inclusion language that was in the 2024 state plan. This is in response to some executive orders from the current federal administration, explicitly saying that DEI cannot be involved in grants awarded by the federal government. So instead, we are shifting from diversity, equity, inclusion to language around being responsive, inclusive, and accessible. We think that that meets the requirements of that executive order that was issued in early 2025, while still maintaining a focus on being customer-centered and customer first. Then the second area that I mentioned, again, are additional planning and coordination efforts. So first, the Dignity and Pay Act, that is an Illinois law that eliminates the sub-minimal wage for workers with disabilities in Illinois. And as part of that law, the state is tasked with developing a 5-year plan for the transition for the elimination of that sub-minimal wage. This draft modification includes some of that plan's suggestions, such as assisting in the creation of cross-agency tools to support employment exploration and planning for individuals with disabilities who want to pursue those competitive integrated employment opportunities. The Illinois Office of New Americans works to ensure that immigrants can successfully integrate into Illinois communities. And they do that by trying to improve access to services, coordinating across agencies, and supporting community-based partners. As part of this plan, we're committing to exploring how the workforce service delivery system can support that support of those immigrants and the work of the Office of New Americans, specifically through employment and workforce participation, doing so in a way that is allowable under and appropriate under WIOA. And then lastly, within the state plan, as part of this modification, we really want to acknowledge the impact that artificial intelligence is having. And so we're looking at two planning efforts over the lifespan of the rest of this state plan related to AI. One of those efforts is to explore potential opportunities for the use of AI in service delivery. How can AI-enabled tools support staff, improve customer experience, and maybe complement existing service models? The other planning effort is to assess AI-related training needs and opportunities for job seekers and employers. So what are those AI-related skills that employers are looking for? And what opportunities are out there for job seekers who want to build up that skill set? Again, both of these, we understand that the landscape around AI especially seems to shift on a day-to-day basis. So in the modification, both of these efforts are really planning focused, so we can continue to respond to it without locking us into any specific path forward. Before I talk about the public comment period, as well as how to review the draft modification and submit questions, I want to pause here and see if anyone has any questions regarding anything I just described or any other questions around the modification. As Antonio said, sometimes if people put questions into the chat, those can get lost. Feel free to do that. But I would encourage you to use the Q&A module if you do have any questions, so we can track them that way.
If any of you would like to unmute for a quick comment, I can also unmute you if you raise your hand virtually.
Great. Thanks, Antonio. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I will move on to the public comment period and how to do that. So the plan will be made available for review and public comment on January 23rd. That is a week from today. The plan will be available. Attendees to today's webinar will receive an email that will include a link to that plan, as well as instructions on how to submit public comments. Those public comments will be open through February 20th. So we will run public comments from the 23rd to February 20th. The team assigned that work group that I talked about earlier, that has put together the draft modification, will review those public comments, incorporate any changes as needed based on those public comments into the plan. And then while unfortunately, we still have not received any additional guidance from the Department of Labor and Department of Education around when the plan is due. We assume that it is going to be the same as it has been in previous years, which is March 15th. March 15th falls on a Sunday this year, so we assume that is March 16th. So once we receive your public comments, we will incorporate those, and the state will submit the plan on or around March 16th. We would encourage you to to, once you receive this information on a week from today, please share this within your networks. We'll be sharing it through other means as well. But please share that within your networks and encourage individuals, stakeholders, organizations to review the plan and submit their comments. We always believe that the more people who review the plan and can provide their viewpoints and their comments, the stronger our plan will be for supporting job seekers and employees and employers and those that deliver the services to those customers.
I do see one comment in the Q&A. Um, in the Illinois in the Illinois WIOA planning process, November 2020. Yeah, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So in the this is from someone saying let me provide a little context. I'm sure many people know this, but just so we're all on the same level, the state is working through the modification of its state plan. At the same time, the economic development regions as well as the local areas are working through the modification to their 4-year plans. This is also required under the law. The state released guidance for 2 economic development regions as well as local areas about what it is seeking in that modification. Within that guidance, we included the strategies, the goals and strategies that were in the 2024 state plan. And someone asked that one of the strategies still lists diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. But that wording is now outdated. Once the plan is officially published for public comment, we will send out updated draft strategies and goals to those areas so they can reflect that. Again, we are keeping that strategy, but we are changing that language to what I mentioned earlier, the responsive, inclusive, and accessible. I hope that answered that. Someone asked if they should remove that wording from their plan in anticipation of new guidance. Yes, so if with those region and local plans, in the guidance issued by the state, there are 6 chapters and subsections under each chapter, and any language regarding DEI requirements regarding DEI was replaced with that responsive, inclusive, and accessible. So just encourage you to follow that language as well. And this is a comment, and this is, again, we'll note this, but this is something that would be ripe for kind of a public comment when that is opened up. The person said that in their area, they're seeing individuals land jobs in new data centers. They're interested if the language pertinent to AI in the state plan will include emerging career opportunities and building support, business supporting this type of role. Yeah, I don't know if we'll address data centers specifically, but we do talk about kind of emerging technologies and supporting career opportunities that way. And I think that's another area where, as we're planning over the next 2 years or exploring what does this kind of emerging technology mean in terms of jobs, both from a everyday use as well as maybe new career opportunities, that'd be something we want to keep track of. So thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. I will put I'm sure that many of you have this, but I am putting it into the chat. I'm putting my email if you have any follow-up questions or comments. Question is, if DEI language is part of a not-for-profit's mission and vision statement, must we change, or do we need to change that language, or just the plan? So I'd like to ask a follow-up question. If is the not-for-profit a like a sub-grantee to one of the core partners? My initial reaction is no. It just the where that language needs to be updated is within um, the the plans, but not as part of your mission or vision. Again, but part of the reason we are doing this is because these are compliance documents required under federal law, and so we're aligning those with kind of the direction from the federal law. Yeah, I don't think you need to update your mission or vision unless that is something you're including in your plan for some reason. Any other questions? All right. Well, I put my email, as I said, I when I looked at the participant list, I know many of you already have this, but I put my email into the public chat. It is drewt@kebcpa.com. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on the state plan modification, or for those of you that are in a working on your local plan modification or your regional plan modification. If you have specific questions about that, feel free to reach out to me and I will do my best to assist you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to pause one more time for questions. Yes, I can share it verbally. So it is DREWT@KEBCPA.com. All right. Any final questions before we close out today's session? All right. Thank you so much, Drew, for walking us through this. I will be sending all of you an email once the public comment period is open with a little bit more information. And we will also be uploading this webinar to the Illinois Workforce Academy within 48 hours. There's also going to be a survey that's sent out to you afterwards about today's session. So if you could fill that out for us, that would be much appreciated. But thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Drew, again.
Yep. Thanks
Have a
all.
wonderful day.
Have a good weekend.